Nintendo should be remaking a bunch of games!
Do you think they know this?
Probably, but let's tell them anyway!
Hot take!
We started having a big conversation about a bunch of old games that we really like that should see remakes because we recently played The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening and we both really liked it.
Yes, yeah, you had a very fun time. You did a hot take on Link's Awakening. I've dabbled with it a little bit. I have to play a little more of it, but you seem to really enjoy it. So
Yeah.
you're convinced that we can get more remakes and remasters on the Switch and they will fare well?
This remake has proven to me that a lot of the older games that Nintendo had developed way back in the 90s, 80s, whenever, were timeless. There's something about them that just works. And Link's Awakening, I cleared the whole thing, loved it from beginning to end. There's some rough patches here and there like any game, but what it is really good. And I think that Nintendo could be taking a lot more of their old stuff, bringing them forward. So we came up with a list of 10, but because we couldn't agree on them, we broke them up into 5s. So you've got 5 games and I've got 5 games. And I'm pretty sure everyone in the comments is going to be super nice to us once we start talking about the
so
things.
let's talk about that right now. These are our selections, and some of them are weird, and today is kind of like, it's a strange day. So you're like, hey, let's make this topic and let's talk about it. And I was like, great! And then my mind went into the land of the weird.
Yes.
So my 5 are a little bit strange. Your 5 are whatever you want it to be,
I will
man.
explain, when I get to my first one, I'm going to explain what I was coming up with.
So you mentioned that you played through Link's Awakening, the remake. Actually, when we dive into both of our lists, we started with a Legend of Zelda game. The game that I chose was Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap. Now, this was a title released on the Game Boy Advance. It was developed. It was kind of the Capcom development team, just like in the Oracle games as well.
Yep.
They've done a lot of stuff with the Legend of Zelda. This game is it's so wonderful. It's beautiful. It's super duper charming, but it's just that Game Boy Advance release. The great thing about Minish Cap is your ability to change the perspective on the world. Basically, there's different little portals that allow your hero Link to go into Minish form, and then what was a tiny little spittle of a puddle on the ground suddenly becomes a vast lake. An enemy that took one hit to kill on the regular map as Big Link suddenly becomes a boss battle later on. There's just so many great things going on there. So I would love to see this remade and brought to the Switch. I'm trying to think of developers for it. I was thinking like Grezzo or Grezzo, however you want to pronounce it. It's the team responsible for a lot of the remakes now, like the Link's Awakening remake, the Luigi's Mansion remake on the 3DS, as well as the Ocarina and Majora's Mask remakes. They've had a lot of experience remaking sort of classic Nintendo games. I think they do a great job here, but you know what I would love to see? Level 5, the creators of the Ni no Kuni games, and even Yokai Watch. I'm not a big fan of Yokai Watch, but there's one thing that's undeniable about the team at Level 5. They're really good at art.
Yes.
Across the board. And I believe that Minish Cap, if you give it, I don't know, like a watercolor kind of thing,
Sure.
like a cell-shaded style to it, with just that Level 5 attention to detail, like being Big Link and going into little Minish Link and exploring this world and all the interesting like perspectives and stuff would be just brilliant and gorgeous.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So my list is just a little bit different. I wanted to kind of restrict myself so I just wasn't saying a bunch of things all the time.
What is that what you're saying? I'm saying?
No, you're...
That's what he's saying.
So basically what I wanted to do was this. I thought of games that already exist, and then I thought of games that have that are newer, that have engines that could be modified or borrowed to remake these older games.
Yeah.
So, for instance, my first pick is Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past.
Oh,
now,
no one's heard of this.
No one's heard of this.
Yes.
Link to the Past, in my opinion, is one of the greatest Zelda games ever made, and this game kind of looks a lot like Link's Awakening. Like, there's aspects of it that are very similar. Now, personally, I think they could take the Link's Awakening engine and move it over, but there is also that semi-sequel on the 3D or
Link
the DS,
Between Worlds, which is another really great game. Yeah.
I mean, you could see the beautiful thing about this is that game already has a lot of the assets in 3D that are kind of representative of what you'd find in Link to the Past.
Sure.
So they could take those 3D models, bring them over, or even just take those games and bring them over to the Switch. Basically, all I want is this. I want a 3D modern version of Link's Awakening. Sorry, A Link to the Past.
So many games.
Yeah, right. A Link to the Past. I want a 3D version of that.
Yeah.
Could be using the Link's Awakening engine. Could be using the other one, Between Worlds. But whatever it is, I want them both together in one package on the Switch. That's what I want. It's not really. It's a half remake, half port. But I want something like that to happen because it could, and it would be really, really cool.
Yeah, because A Link Between Worlds was already sort of a spiritual remake of the original A Link to the Past, right? But there were some things that were different. Bringing both those games over would be awesome. Even if they took like the Link to the Past and they made it. I'm still a sucker for this, and not enough developers are doing this, but have it so that you can switch between the graphic styles and stuff and like kind of tweak them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm cool with that too.
That'd be cool. Okay, my next game is, okay, we heard recently about a studio that was going bankrupt. And I was very sad about this. And actually, Jay and I did a hot take. You weren't here that day, unfortunately. You don't know anything about this.
I don't know anything about this.
Alpha Dream, the team behind the great, absolutely wonderful Mario and Luigi series, they went bankrupt.
Yep.
Yeah, so we don't know exactly what's going to happen with that series. And while I don't believe that the series in and of itself needs a ton of like remake, remaster work done to it, there's already been remasters, I should say, within that series on the 3DS. I just want that whole collection consolidated into one package. We're getting the Mega Man Zero collection coming to the Switch later on, and we already have that on the DS as well. So yeah, I would love just to see maybe like Alpha Dream still getting work. Maybe the team that was Alpha Dream is pulled into Nintendo and they're like, hey, let's get the Mario and Luigi games on the Switch. After we did that hot take, I was talking to a lot of people about the series, the Mario and Luigi series. Not enough people played these games. Even I didn't doing the hot take. So I went and I picked up the remaster of Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, and I've been playing it for hours and hours on end, and it is so amazingly brilliant. It's so good. The art especially really pops. They basically completely repainted completely new paint job to the game, and I'm excited to get into the remake of Bowser's Inside Story as well. These games are sprawling RPGs. If you had them all into one package, we're talking maybe a couple hundred hours worth of game there, and no one played these, and they need to. They need to play these games.
I think they would be far more successful on Switch, honestly, because I think it just makes a lot of sense. It's one of those game series that you know exists. You know it's got two of the biggest video game characters of all time, Mario and Luigi, in it, but people just didn't play it that much.
Right. I think that was part of its detriment. I mean, the biggest game was Bowser's Inside Story, which sold pretty well. But other than that, I think because it was on a handheld platform, people didn't pay as much attention to it. They still reviewed extremely well. And the writing's awesome. I already spoke praises about the art. Just the utilization of hardware that Alpha Dream was doing with the DS and 3DS and stuff. It'd be weird to bring that over to the Switch, but that team seems so talented that they'd probably come up with some really great ideas for the Switch format.
Absolutely.
You want to
move on?
Next one?
Yeah.
Do your next one?
There are so many ideas here, but one I really want to talk about that is weird, but just hear me out.
You seem to be doing a sort of punching motion.
A little bit of a Punch-Out, yeah. Punch-Out. I'm a big fan of Punch-Out. It's one of my favorite games. It is pretty much a puzzle type game because what you're doing is you're trying to find out the right movements to defeat each character, right? It's not really a puzzle game, but it kind of feels
almost like
that.
a rhythm game too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's like a rhythm thing. It's there's something about it that just works. Now, we have a game series that didn't work too well. I don't think a lot of people really cared for it. ARMS. So ARMS has an engine. We could get a Punch-Out variation made with ARMS. I'm surprised ARMS exists at all. ARMS should have just been Punch-Out from the beginning, so I think Nintendo can go back in time and fix things. Basically, if there was a Punch-Out, I'm thinking something like the first game and Super Punch-Out kind of like together.
We can't forget that there was a Punch-Out game on the Wii.
Yes, we can forget about that one.
Which utilized 3D. It wasn't that bad.
It wasn't
that bad. Yeah.
But
maybe you can pull some of the assets from that and spruce them up a little bit.
Exactly, right? I think like a good kind of like a cartoon style to it would be the best.
Of course.
I don't want the motion fighting stuff that you had in Punch-Out from either the Wii or the ARMS variation, but I think the engine could be really cool. I like the idea of moving around. See, with all the Punch-Out games we've had, there hasn't been a lot of really free-form movement in them, so having a game where you could move around and kind of time your attacks, like think of it this way.
Yeah.
It's the same philosophy. You have to find a weakness, but instead of the weakness being like an uppercut or a punch to the gut at a certain point or dodging dodging, whatever. You have all those things, but you're thinking more in the 3D space. So the way that like a 3D boss battle you'd fight in the newer Zelda games, right? Something like that I think would be really cool with this. It basically would be a punch-out game, would just be boss battle after boss battle after boss battle, maybe some training modes and stuff like that, but utilizing the ARMS engine so that they can kind of like, you know, just ease use, just get a lot of that stuff out there all the way.
It's certainly a beloved franchise that doesn't get enough attention, and you still see people cosplaying as all the characters and little Mac and stuff. So you know that a lot of people love the title. So yeah, I'd be super psyched. No matter what the form factor was, as long as they're trying something a little bit different. Because I feel like we are seeing some people making like retro-themed games in that same vein as like Punch-Out and stuff.
Yep.
So yeah, you gotta switch it up a little bit with the Switch. Bink.
Yep.
Speaking of which, you know what's missing from the Switch these days, Shane?
What?
Blah! Spooky games!
Really? We got Luigi's Mansion 3 coming out.
Okay. So there's some scary games, and Luigi's Mansion 3 is not one of them. But a lot of the spooky games coming to the Switch right now are from indie developers or like third parties. But back in the day, Nintendo had a sort of handshake partnership with, was it Silicon Knights? Silicon Knights developed a game called Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem.
Yes.
And it was a very cool take on the survival horror genre. A lot of people remember this game fondly, and there was supposed to be a sequel. The sequel was axed. There was supposed to be a Kickstarter spiritual successor, and that didn't work out either.
No, it did not.
Yeah, like we need a little bit more of Eternal Darkness in the world. But why?
Agree.
Why, Shane? It's just a survival horror game. What made Eternal Darkness so cool?
Eternal Darkness messed with you.
Yes!
Before other games, there's been other games that mess with you, but Eternal Darkness really messed with you.
I feel like Eternal Darkness inspired those games.
I do believe so. There's a concept here where, I don't want to spoil too much, but let's just say maybe your system might turn off, maybe the screen might break, maybe your memory card might fracture, or whatever it is. Are those things actually because your GameCube is failing, or is it because the game is making it happen? That's what
I recall a story where the developers basically went to Nintendo and said, "Yeah, we want to make it seem like the GameCube's failing at this point," and Nintendo was like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna do it." They're like, okay. It was a very begrudging, like, allowing them to do so. So I would love to see, what you're talking about is the sanity meter.
Yes.
So as your character progresses through, well, there's multiple characters, right? As multiple characters progress through what is this game, you see some enemies and stuff, and sometimes if you're in the presence of specific enemies, your sanity meter will go down, and then things will happen. You alluded to some more hardware specific things, but other things too, like bleeding walls, or just the camera shifting into more of a Dutch angle, or sounds happening, or inanimate objects just kind of following you. Just the creepy levels, like fourth wall breaking things that were so cool. And I feel like it was a very ambitious game.
I agree.
Right? So not everything worked out, and if it was updated... Oh, go ahead.
That's the thing. Some of the gameplay is a little chunky.
It is. It's janky.
But see, if you actually... Now, when we say janky, we're not meaning the game is trying to scare you and make janky gameplay. No, it's just jank. It was like straight up, that's just how it is.
This is kind of the second wave of survival horror, or maybe the third wave, you might consider it. So it's still very much like a very young... Felt like a young genre.
But if they fix those things... Now... I'm just going to say this because I believe it could be really well done.
What's that?
I think they should get Capcom to make this and get the team that did the Resident Evil 2 remake.
Yeah.
Because that engine, whoa. I mean, look, Eternal Darkness is one of those games that you just have to go back and play. Even today, it's so amazing. And if your GameCube's really old and it's a little busted and it doesn't work all that great, it makes it even more fun because you never know what's happening. And that's just half of the fun there. It really is a cool game.
Yeah, so I was thinking either, like you, the Capcom team that developed the RE2 remake, or even, like, somehow, like, scraping together the PT people that worked on that demo. I'm like, no, that's precisely, like, I would love to see that implemented into Silent Hill, of course. Everyone would. But if that's not going to happen, possibly getting them over and working on Eternal Darkness, a remake, or even I've been playing through Fatal Frame, the original Fatal Frame, getting some of the team that worked on the Fatal Frame games, because they have a lot of psychological little pop-up things that happen in those games that you're like, oh, that only happens there and never happens again, and it just messes with you?
It's really strange because this game really feels like a Japanese horror game, despite the fact it was all made in Canada. Canada,
Yes,
right? So it's one of the
absolutely.
weird things.
Yeah.
I feel like there has to be some kind of cross there. Look, maybe when Kojima's game is finished and he releases it, maybe
The
Nintendo
first
can just
stretch
go,
of the Stranding
yeah,
genre.
right? Nintendo can just go, hey, how about you take this franchise and do something with it?
Meh.
It would be cool.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Give 'em
but yeah.
monies, sure.
Give them monies. All right, now, next game I want to talk about. I think everybody knows this. I'm not going to go long tooth on it. FZero. Everyone has wanted an FZero game for a very, very long time.
I almost had this on my list.
Now, initially, I think a lot of people out there that have been talking about FZero have been looking to get a port of the arcade releases that we saw a little while ago, which are essentially modified versions of the GameCube releases on the, I believe, Triforce arcade hardware. But I want to go a step further. I actually want a brand new FZero experience, and there is one team I know that would be very good on it. They're a second-party Nintendo company. They are called, I think it's Shinin Media, Multimedia.
Mm-hmm.
They did Fast Remix, RMX. This is a fantastic game. It's one of the launch titles on the Switch, I believe. I played it and immediately I was just like, this is just FZero. We are just looking at FZero.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, do we need? Maybe they could just like slowly fade the FZero logo into that because it is an FZero game.
okay.
But it doesn't really have the characters.
That's
right?
it, right?
You need the characters.
I want the characters. I want a little bit of a fun storyline, and I would very much like it's really good where it is now. But I want it to be kind of modified to be more friendly and more F-Zero-esque. F-Zero is so fast and so effortless in the way that it's designed, and I feel that if they just took a couple of the elements from the previous games they released and kind of blended them in there, you'd get a really good game that I think a lot of people would be excited about. Look, we don't have Fast Remix essentially is just a port or a remixed version of the older Fast games that they released. So if we were to get a fully realized F-Zero game straight from the ground up, I think it would be really cool. Utilizing that engine still, because it is super slick, runs at a high frame rate, and it looks gorgeous still for its age too.
Yeah.
So that's what I think should happen. Maybe it doesn't happen right away. I get it. But that team would be very well suited. So Nintendo, if you could just knock at their door and go, here's the property. Have fun.
Yeah, that's true. I was even thinking the F-Zero Sega developed game that came out for the GameCube.
That's true. Yeah.
They did a pretty good job too.
Sure.
But
I'm all for that. As long as we get more.
Yeah. Okay. So next up on my list is a game that I knew that you'd talk about. So I wanted to put it in here just so we could have this discussion. Donkey Kong is a great classic arcade game.
Yep.
There was already a remake of Donkey Kong. Shane, what is that remake called?
Donkey Kong on the Game Boy, also known as Donkey Kong 94.
Donkey Kong 94.
Oh, this game is so good.
It's so good.
Oh, it's just
and
so
not
good.
enough people talk about it.
No.
It's one of those, right?
Yep. When you see the game, I remember when I was a kid, I saw Donkey Kong on the shelves at Kmart, and I was like, I'm not buying that. I know what Donkey Kong is. I got Donkey Kong on the NES. Why do I need it on the Game Boy?
Yeah.
It turned out that I was a moron. Not having picked up this game, I ruined myself. This game, I remember someone told me, I picked it up. I remember I picked it up years later, and I didn't know anything about it. I put it in the Game Boy. I'm playing it.
You're expecting the 4 levels of Donkey Kong.
And I beat the 4 levels like everyone does. And as soon as I beat that 4th level, I was like, what? Whoa! I mean, I was a kid and it was Game Boy, so it was really exciting. But this game is on the Game Boy. Let's make that clear. It is bigger than the NES release. It is bigger than the arcade release. It is a gigantic, sprawling game with new abilities, new features, boss levels and stages, so much extra stuff. But most importantly, what did it introduce to Mario?
Yeah, I love this little tidbit. So this introduced the triple jump into the Mario series. A lot of people point to Mario 64, but a rudimentary form of that was introduced in this, and it was actually used in such a way where you could kind of catch things, I think, with your feet at some point. It was the first time they were playing with it, and it got expanded later. But it was ideas like that really shook up what was at the time okay, everyone's played Donkey Kong. It's kind of bland in our eyes.
Yes.
It's been around forever. Donkey Kong 94. After you defeat Donkey Kong that first time, the music, the end music shifts. He takes Pauline and is like, I'm going to go to another world, and then you see a world map. There's 9 worlds in the game. There's 101 levels.
It looks better if you play it on the Super Game Boy because you got some added color palettes and stuff like that.
I would love to see Like trying to think of, I would love it if it was a remaster or remake that had a 16-bit sort of look to it. But I would also dig even just the Game Freak team. Game Freak makes. I used to say Game Freak makes amazing games across the board, but they've had some problems here or there. But they've made really good platformers that no one talks about ever, like Pulse Man, which we only had over here in North America on the Sega channel. They also developed the game Drill Dozer that I'm always, yelling at you about, right?
Every day.
So I would love to see them have another chance. Of course, they've done so much work with Nintendo, taking this beloved IP and just, remaking it. And if it was just, if it was just the game that we had on the Game Boy way back when, no new levels or anything, it's still huge, and I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, but honestly, Game Freak's not a bad choice there. If personally, I would go Way Forward. Because Way Forward has shown,
true.
I mean, it's not like they're too far off, right? Way Forward has shown again and again how good they are, and I would love to see them really get their hands on a Nintendo franchise and work on it.
That's
because
a fantastic point.
I think that why this game is so good is because of how well it's designed, and a company like Way Forward understands what makes 2D platformers work. So that's where this could really be fun. I would love to see some a lot more levels, maybe an even create your own stage element and stuff like that.
I was thinking an endless up.
Oh, sure.
Endless up.
Oh, yeah.
Give me an endless up mode. Way Forward, though, dude, I wasn't even thinking about that, but you think about, one of the greatest Contra sequels, Contra 4, all of the movement and shooting and everything was so on point, and that was a Way Forward produced title. So, man, they really, they love the legacy of whatever
A game like this requires precision because it's literally perfected gameplay design. So once you have something like that, if you kind of just shift it around too much and you make it kind of clumsy, suddenly what was a perfect rendition of Donkey Kong becomes a little bit loose and not so fun to play. So personally, I think one of those companies would do very well at it. But honestly, it's got to come back. If anything on this list has to come back a lot, it's this game specifically.
Okay, let's hurry along now. What do you got next?
Okay, this is gonna sound weird. Anybody remember Super Mario All-Stars for the SNES?
I do.
Yeah, so this was basically a collection of Super Mario games. So there was, if you got one of the special versions, it also came with Super Mario World, but you got Super Mario Brothers 1, Lost Levels, which is the original Super Mario Brothers 2. Then you have the North American Super Mario Brothers 2, which is known as Doki Doki Panic.
Doki Doki, yep.
And then you also have Super Mario Brothers 3. It is a large collection of games. It's a big deal. And if you have Super Mario World, I believe Super Mario World on the Super Mario All-Stars collection has some additions you don't find in the original.
Special sprites.
Yeah, special sprites. I believe Luigi actually looks like Luigi, and he plays a little bit different too. So there's variations there. That right there is a very big collection of games. However, we recently got to see Mario Maker 2 got released on the Switch, and you have a lot of those assets already there, so it would be cool to see all of those levels, all of those stages be remade by some of the team from Mario Maker 2 so that we can just have something like that. I literally want a HD 60 frames per second version of all of these games that are developed in widescreen, that have a little bit of refinement, stuff you can't do with Mario Maker 2. But it's it's there. The pieces are already there. You just have to put it all together and turn it into something great.
It would be such an easy go for Nintendo to release that. Now, they did release a Wii-based collection, I think celebrating one of the Mario anniversaries. We're not talking about that, you know.
That was just the SNES
Yeah,
version
exactly.
right?
It wasn't that impressive. We want something that has a little more polish on it. But I don't think they would need to do all that much,
No.
personally.
I mean, I think about the things that they could do that really, just make it stand out a bit. So I'm talking, what we've seen with Mario Maker 2 is the ability to switch between generations of the game. So I want to be able to see the 3D mode. I want to be able to go back to original sprites. How cool would it be to play Super Mario World, but it looks like an original Super Mario Brothers title, right? Having those abilities, maybe a CRT filter so it looks like the older game. Because remember, you think about it now, maybe a lot of people that are watching remember Mario games really well, but there's a huge group of people out there that picked up the Switch for the very first time and they've never played the original Super Mario Brothers games. So this would be a really cool way to bring that back. And also at the same time, it would probably make people feel like, hey, maybe I should pick up Mario Maker 2 and make my own levels after seeing how well these levels were designed.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a great way to kind of segue the audience over there. Okay, let's talk about a system that completely failed.
Yes.
Okay.
I knew you were going to do one of these.
Yeah,
I knew.
you knew
I
one
looked
of
at
these
the
coming.
list and I was like, you're going to pick one. But
Yeah.
I
Okay.
figured it was going to be this one.
The Virtual Boy was a system that was only on the market for a few months. I think it was about 6 months or so.
Yep.
It released. It had a double digit of releases on the extreme low ends. I think it's 12 or 14. I gotta double check that. But there was one title released specifically to the Virtual Boy that I think is wonderful, and it's a pitch perfect platforming title. No one's played.
Yep.
It's like 1% of gamers out there have played this, or less, far less. I'm assuming.
You and I
far,
both have
far
played
less.
this, but
It's Wario Land on the Virtual Boy. Wario Land on the Virtual Boy. It doesn't do anything that is extremely mind-blowing, but this is a Wario Land on what is essentially a 32-bit system. The system itself, yeah, it had problems. It had big problems. Wario Land wasn't one of those problems. You're collecting treasure. You're getting cool power-ups. There's a dragon hat. It shoots fire. It allows you to fly. It is a very, very good platformer, and it has like, I don't know if it's because everything's in red and black, but it has almost like a spooky, kind of scary vibe to it. A lot of the bosses are very sharp and very evil looking. This is a very evil feeling sort of like Nintendo title. It feels very different. So I would love this to be brought back. I'd love this to be remastered for people to finally play it. And I was thinking that because there's depth, like, no, we're tossing the 3D out of the way. I know, it sucks. I'll talk a little bit about that more in a second, though. But Retro Studios has been doing some great stuff with the Donkey Kong franchise. We had Donkey Kong Country Returns, and we had Tropical Freeze. And those games in particular, especially Tropical Freeze, did some depth.
Yes.
Yeah, and they did a really great job.
See, back when they released the original Virtual Boy, we really didn't have a lot of 3D games. I mean, they existed, there just wasn't many. So a sprite-based game that could go back and forth, it was hard to represent that, but the Virtual Boy was capable of doing that because of its stereoscopic display. So nowadays, because we have 3D engines and stuff like that, it would be a lot easier. Personally, if I were to see someone make this, again, I'm going to say way forward because, again, they've done things like this in the past. I believe that 2D sprites would be the best choice here. I don't think making a 3D world would make sense, but 2D sprites with really cool parallax scrolling and stuff like that, this is an easy get. I mean, it's a game that
no one's played.
It's
a Wario Land that Wario Land game. Probably the best Wario Land game no one's played.
Yeah, honestly, it's a shame. It's a shame that most people just think of the Virtual Boy and think everything on the system sucks when that isn't true. Even the worst systems out there have really good games once in a while, and this is one of the best games you're going to find from Nintendo. Just happens to be on the Virtual Boy.
Just going to push this in here, Shane. Labo support. 3D Labo support with a really stupid, so dumb Virtual Boy stand made out of cardboard that you hook the 3D Labo kit into and have the miserable Virtual Boy experience right there in 2020.
I'm totally cool with that.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, because like think about that. The screen of the Switch is, to my knowledge, enough resolution to cover what was on the Virtual Boy. I might even look up these facts, but you tell me if I'm wrong, folks. I'm pretty sure there's enough pixels there. You would have a wonderful look. I would totally buy that. A cardboard Virtual Boy that you had to build.
It comes with every game, so it's fine. Nintendo's like, it's fine. No one wants to play this, but it comes with every
Why not?
every copy.
Why not? There was only like 20
The
games.
box is like this big.
Yeah, it just give them all the games. That would be the greatest. Look, there's Tetra Boxer, there's Teller Boxer. Yeah. There's Mario Tennis. There's like all these games on there that are, maybe not the best, whatever, but this would be a great thing. Nintendo, if you're struggling at all with selling any of the Labo stuff whatsoever.
Why do you think they're struggling with that, Shane?
Because they might
anyway, continue.
Yeah, I think they should do this. But here's the caveat, okay? If you design the cardboard, it has to be done in some way where not only does it work with the old Switch stuff, but it also works with the Lite. If you can do that, you're going to get the new audience, the old audience all together. I think it would be a win. That's my own personal opinion. 2 different
Labo kits for the different form factors. The box has now not only become this big, but it's like this thick. Yeah. It's like a cube. It's like a game cube.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your last game?
All right. This is a big one. I am a huge fan of the Game Boy Advance. Adam, do you like the Game Boy Advance?
Yeah, I like it okay.
What's one of the best strategy games on the Game Boy Advance?
There's a lot of great strategy games
What's
on
one
the
of the
Game
best?
Boy Advance.
Yeah.
But I think we're both in the same mindset here. Advance Wars.
Advance Wars originally started as Famicom Wars way back when.
The Famicom.
Yep, the Advance Wars is such a good strategy game. It's simple, it's easy, you can pick it up, put it down as fast as you want. It is a really good game. There are so many ideas that could be evolved and added. We do have Advance Wars games that have been released on other platforms as well. It's not just limited to the Game Boy Advance.
That's right.
And I think the DS releases are pretty cool as well.
The first one was good. The second one was not as good.
Yeah, a little bit rough around the edges. But what's important to me is that the Switch now provides an interesting ability because it has a touchscreen while also being a home console, so you can have this nice big screen in front of you where you can point to everything you want to do. Now, I've been playing games like FTL and others that basically have that same kind of strategy element to them, but one game specifically really stands out, and this is the company that made this game that I think should be making this this new sequel. Basically, they're called Chucklefish. They created a game called Wargroove. Wargroove is a fantastic game. Initially, when I played it, wasn't a fan. There was a couple of elements of it that really didn't work out that well, but the company has improved and kind of just made better rule sets for the game and kept releasing updates, so now the game is far better today than it was in the past. If you did play it all the way back in the day when it originally came out, which wasn't that long ago, I say back in the day like it was years, back when it came out, it had a like just kind of a...
It had some difficulty spikes because of the way that the game was constructed.
Yes.
And like you said, the developers have since gone back and shown how much that they appreciate the product they're putting out there and the fans of that product.
Yeah.
And they basically made it better.
Yeah, it felt like the levels were designed in such a way that you could only beat them in one specific style and there was no variation to it, which I didn't think was very fun because that's not what Advance Wars was really about. But again, they were making their own game. Yeah. But if they made Advance Wars, not only is this company fantastic at sprite work, they're also really good with music and narrative design and stuff like that. There's a whole bunch of elements going on here, and I think if they were to get their hands on Advance Wars, bring back that 2D aesthetic. I'm not talking 3D. I don't want anything weird like that.
A lot of 2D, a lot of retro looks today.
But
I dig it, man.
But see, that's the thing. I think that when we're talking about the Switch, we're talking about a system that, although is very capable at 3D graphics, I believe that a lot of these games have really strong presences in their original form.
Yep.
So just improving those things a little bit and adding little couple textures here and there, I think would really improve stuff. Personally, that's what I think would be a great game. Chucklefish, I want them to make Advance Wars. I don't know what maybe they call it Switch Wars now because we're no longer on the Game Boy Advance. Whatever they want to call it.
It was Advance Wars on the DS as well.
Sure,
I think we're good. I think we're good with Advance. And you know what? There's going to be a lot of people saying that Fire Emblem has taken over where Advance Wars. That's not true. The world can. We've seen because of Wargroove that we could use more.
No,
we could certainly use more.
I believe Fire Emblem is a very different beast. It's different kind of gameplay implementations. It also has a lot of story stuff. And let me make this clear. I only want one version of the game. I don't want to buy multiple versions of the game to get all the storylines. That
was just one.
I know, but still, I think that a Switch Wars would be really smart and done specifically by this team. I want this team that has so much passion to make their own variation of the game to take this forward and work with them. And I think Nintendo could just give them a little bit of money, give them some time. They've shown what they can do with a small budget and a small team. I think with a little bit of an expansion, they could do something great here.
You've convinced me. Wonderful. We're going to get this now. Okay,
hopefully. But have I convinced everyone else?
Before we wrap up, really quickly, I know we both did 5 games.
Yes.
But Shane, how about this? How about we take Super Mario RPG?
Yep.
Okay. And then we take the folks that have been working on Final Fantasy VII, the remake, for like ever, and then we bring them over and we say, hey, remake Super Mario just like you're doing over there. And then they start reconstructing this horrific, but wonderful, but horrific sort of like hellish landscape Mario. That's
like an ultra-realistic
an ultra-realistic Super Mario RPG. Where Gino is like, he's like maybe time has passed, but it's a remake, but I don't understand. But maybe his wood is all like disheveled and mallow.
They're at the very beginning. They're on top of the chandelier, and Mario's just hanging like he's got like a fireball in a hand, and like he's like I don't know, Koopa's hanging onto the edge, and then he's like, "Killing me won't bring the princess back." I know. That's it, and that's the end.
That's the remake we all deserve, I
think
believe.
so,
Okay, so yeah, that was 5 and 5 plus 1
Yep.
remakes that we want to see on the Switch. Do you agree with either of us, either of our lists? Are there any games in particular that you're really passionate about that you want to see remastered or remade? I'm sure no one has any other sort of choices because we chose the best ones.
Yeah, or did you think of another company that would have been better to actually make the games we talked about that we didn't mention? Because I'd like to hear that, and I'm pretty sure everyone's going to say Valve and a Mario first-person shooter. But let's see what happens, folks.
Yeah, let us know in the comments below.